Now, Nathan Cleverly is a WBO champion, and about 20-odd years ago, we didn't really have any WBO champions. It was new. It established itself with a couple of big names, and one of the very first WBO fights to take place in this country was, if I'm not mistaken, 20 years ago tomorrow. And the man who was challenging for the WBO title is on my sofa. And the man he was challenging was a former Olympian. In fact, I think he'd even got the best boxer award at the 84 Olympics or whatever it was Maurizio Stecca. The odds were stacked against my guest tonight, but he managed to pull it off, and it's a delight and a pleasure to welcome back to the side, because the last time he was here we only gave him 90 seconds for kicking him out, which was a bit rude of us. Colin McMillan. Cole, did you realise it was 20 years?
20 years tomorrow.
20 years tomorrow?
20 years, yeah. Time's flown by, but...
Oh, man. I've got to be honest with you, I thought that was an expression, oh, time flies, but it really does, because I can remember the build-up that week, I can remember the conferences, I can remember going to Ali Pali on the night, I can remember the whole thing.
Yeah, even for me, it seems like yesterday, you know, before you look around, it's kind of like it's flown past, it really has, but like, you know, a lot has happened, but, you know, a lot of good times, and, you know, had a great career.
Now, when you found out you had Stecca, I mean, obviously he was on your radar, you knew about him, but back then, Cole, I mean, people forget this now. I mean, how did you go about watching more of his fights? Can you remember? Like now, you can just YouTube it, watch as many as you like. But 20 years and 3 months ago, how the hell did you find out more about a fighter?
Yeah, I think back in the days it was a lot harder.
Yeah, it was.
To kind of get guys who specialise in getting boxing videos, people like Eric Guy.
Yeah, Eric Guy,
you know, does a lot, and just try and go through everywhere, try and get some footage to try and have a look at him. And you know, fortunately, I like to try and study most of my opponents, so I always found a way to try and get some footage and study them. And
is that because you like to train, you know, not just train for them, but train absolutely for them, tunnel vision on their style? And the second part of that question is, can you remember who you sparred with for the fight?
Sparring-wise, actually, I'll tell you who I did spar. I sparred for Duke McKenzie.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Duke as well?
Duke, obviously, he was fighting the same time, I think a week before my fight. So we sparred, you know, he led to the fight, so you can't get no better than that, one of the best fighters this country's produced.
Did you go over and spar with him at the Henry Cooper, or did he come over to you?
I think we both trained at the Henry Cooper, that's why I trained, so we came over to there. And yeah, we had some great sessions and that, so, you know, that was ideal for me.
And what about on the night, Cole? Because, as I say, on paper, he didn't start as the favourite. I think I tipped you in the Telegraph to win, but I'm not sure, looking back, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure if that was out of loyalty, because I've known you.
I think a lot of the broadsheets tipped me, a lot of the tabloids went for Stecca.
Because of the gold and the fact he was unbeaten at that stage, wasn't he?
He was, 45 fights and 44 wins, 1 loss.
OK, I wasn't sure about that. Now, how soon into the fight, because you set into a pattern, you boxed beautifully, I mean, it was almost, you know, it was like one of those, everything went right. That's what it looked like from outside the ring. How soon into that fight did you feel like it was going right? That you couldn't put a foot wrong. You know what I mean by that,
yeah,
Cole?
I mean, sometimes you say, like in boxing, all you hope for is a good day.
Yeah.
Because you never know, you wake up in the morning, things just kind of fall into place. And I felt good all the way up to, I had a great training camp, you know, everything went well, and I felt confident. And, you know, from the off, you know, kind of fell into place. And like from the first time when the bell kind of goes, you know, the speed, everything else, it falls into place.
Bang,
yeah, so I knew that, you know.
And he got frustrated, didn't he, as well? He started to get frustrated because you seem to be preempting, you seem to be guessing what he was going to do.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, I was up for the fight because obviously I knew he was very, very good. I mean, obviously, my aim as a kid was also to go to the Olympics. I never was in the Olympic squad, never got there. So for me to actually fight him and to beat him and fight for the world championship, kind of kill two with one stone. So mentally, you know, I was very, very up for the fight and, you know, very, very sharp. And I think, you know, where he'd been around a long time, you know, and I think he's a bit surprised how fast I was. And, you know, someone who could actually outbox him. So, no, it was a great night.
It was a great night. Now, I mean, I would consider that to be your finest night, but do you consider that your finest night? Because sometimes it's not always that way. Do you consider that your finest night?
I think so, because obviously, given his record, it's a great kind of achievement. For me, as I say, where my whole aim throughout boxing was to win the Olympics and become a world champion, so it kind of killed two birds with one stone. But I think that one and the Gary Daru fight, when I actually won the British Championship.
In that little mad little bit at the back of the London Arena. That was another night when it all went right for you. That was a fiery night that night, Cole.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great atmosphere.
Yeah, it was.
And he was a puncher, so I mean, those 2 nights really kind of stand out for me. You know, unfortunately, the shoulder kind of like... You know,
yeah, now, that, of course, that's the first fight after the Stecca fight, is the defence, when you injure your shoulder. I mean, that's not just a low point in your career, but it's a potential injury that end your career as well. That was A, a tough fight, and B, a hard road back from there, Cole, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, to be fair, I think you said it at the time to my wife, but you don't think you realise that you're never going to be the same again. And at the time...
Shoot, that's a harsh thing for me to say.
Yeah,
I didn't mean it nastily. I didn't mean it nastily.
But actually, it proved to be right. I mean, at the time when you're quite young, you get an injury, you think, give it some time and you're going to recover. But like, you know, physically and mentally, if I tried a few different things, had a couple of operations, but like, after a while you get to know it's never going to be like it was before.
You sense it, don't you?
You can tell. And if you sit back and you watch the videos and that, you can see after the fight the power in the left hand is not really there. Yeah. So you know, it's one of those things. Unfortunately, you know, for me.
Yeah. Because I mean, take that injury away. I mean, we were plotting. You know, in my head, I'm plotting this fight. I'm thinking of 3 or 4 year.
We had some big fights. I think we had.
Oh no, we had some big fights out
there. Paul Hodgson was out there. Paul Hodgkinson.
Well, we went out to Hoko. Were you out in Toulon or somewhere, wasn't it?
That's right, Toulouse. We fought. That's it. Yeah.
Toulouse also. Listen, stay there, Cole. We've got to go away to one interview. We'll speak to Colin a bit more in a minute because we want to talk about. He's already got a book out. Came out a few years ago. We're going to do another book now. Earlier, I saw Colin McMillan in the studio with me. Now, Colin, the book came out a good few years ago. Fight the Power. Are you going to update it, or is there? I mean, you're not going to change any of the first bits, are you? Don't do that. Just going to add to it.
All it basically is, I mean, is to commemorate 20 years of being a world championship. You know, sometimes it's kind of like good to know what you do after your career is finished.
Yeah.
You know, so like marking the 20th years, I kind of like just updated a few chapters talking about because something's very, very difficult when you're doing something. You know, you're 15, quite young, and all of a sudden, you know, your career's over. You try and find a new direction is something difficult.
Do you think, Colin, and I think this with ex-fighters, do you think that it's harder in some ways for guys that have, no disrespect to the guys that don't win British titles and Commonwealth titles and world titles, but do you think it's harder for you guys that have been at the top, that have had that bit of fame, than it is for, say, a guy that maybe fights for a southern area and still has 30 fights and it takes up 10 years of his life? Do you think it's harder for guys like you?
I think possibly so. Because, you know, it takes a little bit more commitment to kind of go all the way to actually reach the top. And as I say, when you kind of get there, you know, to think, what am I going to do now? You know, it's only there for a very, very short period of time, and you've got to kind of redirect yourself and find out what you're going to do with the rest of your time. And I think you speak to most fighters and most champions and they find it very, very difficult to adjust, you know, after their career comes to an end.
How hard did you find it?
It was difficult. I mean, for me, I fortunately had a good education, so I kind of like didn't plan for it, but I thought I could try and do other things. But you know, sometimes it's very, very hard. And even for me, you know, I always say, you know, boxing. You think about boxing every day of your life when you're boxing from 15 years old. You know, even when you're resting, you're resting about because you want to rest until you actually start training.
Sure.
So it becomes your whole pattern, your whole thought process has got to change. So like, it was hard, particularly for the first year or two, to try and find your feet again, and then kind of like, you know, feel comfortable doing something else.
Once you'd got clear of it, Cole, like say 2 years or 1 year or 3, did you get any of those itches that too many fighters have that you think you could still do it again? I can get down the weight. I feel okay on the bag.
You know, I think for me the good thing in a funny kind of way was the shoulder.
Yeah, because that was telling you.
It was a physical shoulder, a physical problem. So I mean, every now and again you kind of go into the gym and start whacking away at the bag in the back of my house and that, and I could still feel it still niggling. So in a way, it told me that, you know, every time I fought, in your mind you think you can still do it.
Yeah.
You know, physically you knew. You know, I knew that it wasn't still capable. So you know, in a way, I was quite fortunate. That kind of like told me, you know, it's gonna not gonna happen.
You know, after the first operation, Cole, after losing the title, after that first op, I mean, was there a point when you were in the gym, back working, either sparring or hitting a bag, when, you know, I know you sort of talk about, you know, if you watch the fights, you can see I'm not using that hand. But can you remember the point when you thought it's not back, it's not right? Could you remember? Was there a point?
I don't know, because you always still hope, don't you? You always still think, you know, if I work a bit harder...
Hope or delude. It's like you're deluding yourself, aren't you? I mean, not nastily, you just are.
You think to yourself, I think when you're young, I can still do it. If I work a bit harder, if I try and do a bit more strengthening, it's going to get stronger. But, you know, you never kind of comes back, and I think, particularly at that kind of level, you know, it's never... You need that split-second reaction time, and obviously,
of course you do.
If you're thinking
especially
about
you, the way you fought, if you don't mind me saying so, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know...
That was your big thing, wasn't it?
Speed, speed was the key. Yeah.
And then because as you, I mean, you still had, I mean, let's get this right. You know, it wasn't like losing the world title and then the end of the career. I mean, you had probably... How many fights you have after that? Probably as many as you had before it, almost.
I had quite a few there.
Yeah.
We regained a British Championship.
Exactly, yeah, of course.
And I got myself into position. We were trying to get the fight with Naseem Hamid.
Yeah, of course, yeah. That was a fight you were pushing for. And it was one that just about made sense and would have made sense without the shoulder injury. If you'd have carried on, you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, we sparred together years and years ago when I was like...
How was that?
British. That was good. I mean, I was always confident, you know, but like...
You always fancied Naz, didn't you?
Yeah.
I know you did. I know you always fancied Naz.
Yeah, because Naz, I mean, as I say, if you watch all his fights, guys that can box and got speed are always going to give him trouble. And we sparred years ago, and I know he had a lot of respect for me. So, you know, but, you know, it would have been a great fight.
So, but looking back on it, Cole, looking back on, you know, on the actual boxing career itself, I know it's quite a provocative title of the book, Fight the Power. But do you have regrets as such?
Not at all. I think, you know, I chose that path, and you know, I would like to always be in control of my career. You know, I chose that path. I had a great agent, Jonathan Mendel. We worked together, and as I say, everything was going according to plan. You know, it just for the shoulder, a bit of bad luck. Yeah. You know, if the shoulder hadn't happened, I'd say we had fights lined up with Paul Hodgkinson for the unification.
Yeah, which was a big one, man.
It would have been a big one, and then obviously Kevin Kelly was out there at the same time.
Yeah.
So there was loads of things, and I would have kind of gone clear, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be. So a little bit unfortunate.
Do us a favour, Cole. Hold the book up to camera 2 a bit slow. We missed it last time. That's the book. It's called Fight the Power. It's still available now on Amazon and stuff, but the new one will be coming out at some point.
I'm kind of like doing a book signing and launching it at the Sunny Show.
The Joe Long Senny thing.
Yeah,
that's next weekend or whenever.
June the 2nd and 3rd.
Okay, so June the 2nd at Senny at the XL, you'll be signing a book.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Colin, thanks very much for that, and I'll give that another plug on next week's show.
Yeah, lovely, great.
So if you want to buy a copy of the new book from Colin McMillan, get along to Senny. That's the exhibition that's going to be on June the 2nd and the 3rd, I think, out at the XL. It's absolutely brilliant.